Today's guest is a former Special Operations Combat Search and Rescue Specialist known as a PJ, Stephen Nesbit. Steve was attached to the Tier 1 24th Special Tactics Squadron and was involved in 10 deployments during his career all over the world and to classified locations in rescue and direct action missions. He is also the founder of the nonprofit Shields and Stripes. Today we discuss hostage rescues, the tragic death of his teammates, the effects of PTSD and TBI on himself and his family, and more. Today's guest, Steve Nesbit.
You're being
first
tasked with
deployment?
that. Mine was to Afghanistan.
What year was this?
This is 2010.
Okay.
Yeah. And so nobody on day 3 being in country, this was the first time I'd ever gotten shot at and just didn't know what it was. It's an interesting story. I don't know if we're recording or
Yeah.
Oh, we are?
Yeah, we've been recording. It's easy to just like slip right into it.
It was, yeah. So day 3 in the country and really sitting on the roof just catching a tan because we're usually working at night. So it was like, all right, we're catching a tan before bed, I think. So the sun was rising, and then you see an explosion off in the distance. I was like, oh, that's pretty interesting. Like now, like it kind of hits you like, okay, yeah, now there are really bad people out here, and there's some people that want to kill you, and this was still far enough away for it to just like you to sit there and watch.
Are we on Kabul? Or?
This was out in Jalalabad, Afghanistan, and so. Sitting on the roof with several of my teammates and whatnot, and you could see like the birds, the helicopters that were with us or that were in front of us, they all take off, and you see them doing their gun runs, and their gun runs like it's different than what you see in the movies because they're like in the movies they're like sitting there hovering, and then these missiles shoot out. When in actuality they're going up and then diving straight down on top of the guy that the people are trying to kill. And just shooting these missiles and whatnot. I was like, oh man, this is pretty wild. And then
Just out there, just tanning, just watching. Like, oh, this is sick, dude.
yeah, and then board shorts and flip flops essentially. And then you see some of the snipers go up on the tower, and so they're making calls out to the aircrafts. And I was like, it still was like it was far away, and so it was cool to watch. And then
how old are you at this time?
Shoot, I think it's 2010. Do some quick math here. 24.
Okay,
yeah.
so 24, 3 days in.
Yeah. And then I was like, man, it sounds like somebody's shooting like right down in front of me. And I just couldn't I was like, who are they seeing? Because and also who is doing that? Because it sounded
Just
like
heard
this,
the snapping.
Yeah, I just heard it sounded like a gunshot next to me. And I was like, I just didn't know what that was. And then the guy that was with me, I was like, is there somebody shooting? He's like, yeah, I hear it too. And then we looked down and then you could see like the rounds hitting the wall in front of us. And I was like, I think somebody's shooting at us. And then he's like, yeah, I think so too. And then you hear that and the whizzes go by you. And I was like, oh man, we should get down.
These bitches are shooting at us.
And so we lay down and there's some other teams that are over on the top of the other building. I was like, hey, get down, they're shooting at us. And a couple of them actually just jumped off the roof, and a couple of them had to get sent home because they broke their ankles.
Oh, dude, imagine like you just get in, you just break your
just
fucking
got
ankle.
in the country. Yeah, exactly. So then that was that time. Like, okay, let's go throw a kit on and then go see if we can go to the wall and stand our ground and whatnot. And so essentially it was just a complex vehicle-borne attack on the base, and I think 16 insurgents ended up just getting killed by base security.
So they detonate at the gate, or do they get close enough to the gate?
Yeah, they got close. They usually get pretty close to the wall or the gates, and then detonate. And you'll see that a lot, especially in that like 2010 to 2014 era, where you'd see like Salerno, especially that east region, where these V beds or people would walk up to the gate and blow themselves up, and then it would open up a hole for these people these insurgents that were high on drugs and overweight, carrying like tons of RPGs and stuff, and just like wandering through the base and Like you'd see it's like a security contractor or just like a couple guys walk around, turn the corner and shoot them. And so it's, but yeah. So anyway, so that was day 3 in country. And I was like, and when I first joined, I didn't really have a desire for the combat side of the house. Like
Really?
I really wanted to go and be a rescue PJ. And at least in my mind, this is what I thought it was. I thought it was, you go to a rescue side and it was really more oriented to like civil search and rescue. And that's what like interested me more at that young, naive realm. And then as I deployed out to this unit and I went with them and we got into that little firefight and I was like, man, that was really cool. I like that. That was fun. And then, going out and flying with this really high level team, and watching them insert to these objectives and these hostage rescue targets or high value targets in the middle of the night, as I'm flying on these aircraft in the pitch black. And I was like, man, this is pretty freaking cool. I think
so
I'm gonna
as
do
a
that.
PJ, are you embedded, say on that first deployment, do you go out on each one of these ops as just the medic for the team, or are you kind of like a QRF at the base and you get called out if you need be?
For that particular deployment and that role that I was in, I was CSAR, so we would be triggered on whatever. Like traditionally, if there was a aircraft crash or some sort of complex situation that the team on the ground couldn't handle. Now, the teams that were going out and doing the job also had PJs attached to them, and so you had two to three PJs embedded with that task force, and so that's a joint task force. And then at some point, as that became more popular, then you started seeing more of those embedded roles, and you started seeing PJs attached to Ranger teams, attached to ODAs, attached to regular SEAL teams, and that became a commonality. Now you're not only a medic for the team, but you're also a rescue specialist. And traditionally, we're known for ropes. We can tie knots and we can set up rope systems and whatnot, and we carry extrication gear. So,
so really the difference between, say, like a team medic and with the PJs, you're specialized in that extrication, say, from vehicles, aircraft, buildings, and you just have a higher scope of practice and care?
Yeah, so I think the best way to describe it, and usually like I like to meet with, especially in the joint world, I like to meet with the medics, the dedicated medics, where a lot of them, they're very good medics and they're very good at sick call medicine and things like that, like identifying infections. They're also really great at trauma. Our focus, me specifically, I hated doing sick call medicine, so I didn't do it. But I prefer, anything trauma related, just plug a hole, stop the bleed, is my realm. So I didn't carry a lot of extra med gear on me. But then that other aspect that we bring to the fight is that rescue, tech rescue capabilities. So if I had a grinder or a sawzall, a jaws of life, I had rope kit. So I had these other tools and really the knowledge, the know-how in the brain of, hey, here's how we can solve this problem.
Nice.
And so like if there was a complex medical problem, that was the DS medic or the support medic or the primary medic, that was his role. If there was a complicated like for example, if I needed to access a patient, I would actually probably set up a rope system to lower my medic, who was not a PJ, down into that space. They would do the treating. I would work the actual problem, the haul system and all that stuff.
Okay, yeah, so you specialize in getting in, getting out on top of other things.
Yeah, I think, I hate describing this, but I think the best way for the layperson to understand it is all the things that a Navy SEAL does and then all the ththink a firefighter paramedic does. And you combine those two, and that's the best way to describe what a PJ does.
Nice. Yeah, I remember when I was in LA, I think it was LA County Trauma Center, like in our workup for our deployment, I realized that too, that I hated sick call stuff because we'd get like gunshot wounds or like car wrecks, things like that come in, and I'd be like, yeah, let's go. And then the minute you get some homeless person who's like peeing on himself and has a cold, I'm like, all right, I'm out. I'm not doing any of this.
Yeah, and especially like guys that have, weird rashes and infections and stuff like that. And I'm like, here's some clindamycin and some C-packs. Like, you maybe make better choices.
Well, and for you, I mean, over your career, the amount of trauma you probably saw, it heightens your sense of what is emergent and what's not. So then you see those sick call people, and it's like, okay, dude.
Yeah, and it's also gross and it doesn't smell good, and so like like I can look at a bleed or I can look at a problem, a trauma problem, and I can solve that pretty quickly, and then it turns automatic. Where like, okay, I know where to go, I know what to do with this.
So on that first deployment in Afghanistan, do you remember your first rescue out there?
So we didn't really have, fortunately, with that deployment, there was no real Americans that we had to treat. We did have to hoist a hostage who didn't survive their wounds.
What happened with that?
That one was a challenging situation where a hostage that they had been tracking for a while, several weeks, and finally found out where she was. At least had good fidelity on where she was. It was a challenging space to get into. It was like a bowl. So the teams had her fast rope into the area. And then they got into the space and got into a pretty big firefight. The CSAR team was still on board the aircraft. And somebody made a pretty poor decision and threw an explosive into the space.
Was it like a building or?
It was a building, yeah. And so threw an explosive in there. Hostage happened to be in there, blew up. Hostage took some frag, and I believe also the barricaded shooter that was in there was wearing an S-vest, so that also had an explosion go off. And then the PJs and the medics went in there, ultimately treated her as best they could, and then hoisted her up into our aircraft, and then we did the transload.
So was this Taliban or was some local tribes or?
I don't know exactly who it was a terrorist network. I don't know if it was Taliban associated or Haqqani network. But it was essentially how they typically take hostages as either a target of opportunity, essentially as somebody who doesn't really belong there. Mm-hmm. Somebody with bad intentions takes that person, sells it to essentially a local militia or a local gang or even the Taliban directly. So that's their form of it's a bounty, essentially. They make money off of it, and now the Taliban has a hostage that they can use against the U.S. government for their concessions.
And so was that hostage, was it American or something?
Yeah. That one was a Brit.
Oh.
Yeah. So
do you know how they got her?
Yeah, there's I imagine her team that she was working with, the people she was working with, sold her out in some capacity. So she was an agriculturalist that was in the area doing agriculture stuff with the local population. But then there was also some other reports that came out and some other information that came out that was a little bit more sensitive. I guess I'll just leave it at that, I guess.
Yeah. And so was she conscious when you picked her up? She got to your aircraft?
No, she was already dead. Yeah.
So how was that? Is that your first? I mean, you probably worked on cadavers and stuff and the workups. Was that your first Brit or American death or casualty that you worked with?
I guess yes and no. I mean, you go through your paramedic clinicals and whatnot, and so you're seeing that people are dying in your ambulance and whatnot. So it wasn't necessarily and it still wasn't it wasn't like your boy in front of you getting shot, and there wasn't a lot of work to be done. So it didn't really hit as home as other situations because other people had already treated her.
And that's just part of the job. I mean, at that point, it's over.
Yeah. And so it was really kind of a remains transfer kind of thing. Unfortunate circumstances, but it didn't hit as hard as some of the other things. And really early in my career, the first loss was really at the in-dock course in selection. So we had started with 120 folks, 120 dudes at the time. We finished with 12. So it was a 90% attrition rate. In dock, we finished with, I think, 18 or something. But one of our guys, the combat rescue officer, our class leader, he ended up passing away in a pool iteration. We was a typical Black Thursday is what they call it. And instructors come pulling up in a van with bullhorns going and screaming and yelling. And you're like, oh God, today's going to suck. And so you lean back and you start doing your flutter kicks, and they start throwing stuff in the pool and charging your mask and screaming and yelling, trying to get your heart rate up. And then they're like, hey, go duck walk to the other end of the pool, duck walk to that other end. And they're like, all right, you're going to do a giant stride entry, jump into the pool, do a front flip underwater, and then you're going to do a 50 meter underwater. And I was like, man, my heart is like 140 beats per minute right now. I'm for sure passing out. And I think everybody else was already like in that mode as well. And so there's like 2 instructors in the pool, and we end up, I enter the pool and do my front flip, and I'm already like, oh, this is not good.
You just hear your heart pounding in your ears underwater.
And I'm already like, just the body's on fire from the CO2 buildup. And so they had thrown a bench in the pool, and one of the guys that was with me, or right next to me, I think like we looked at each other underwater and like we grabbed the bench, like as if we're going to pull this thing and we're going to end up launching, like you see in the movies, like we're pulling against stuff. And we ended up grabbing the bench and pulling it, and the bench actually moved and we stayed in place. And I was like, well, that was a wasted effort. Like that was a lot of energy that we just really burnt in that one stroke. So as I started my way down and got towards the shallow end of the pool, it's always like a mind game on that end of the pool, because you could just stand up. And I was like, man, you know what? I think I've never popped up for air before, but this moment I was like, I think I'm just gonna pop up for air and just get some air right now, because I'm not doing great. And I looked over to the left, and there was a dude next to me just getting thrashed by one of the instructors. And that instructor was like the guy that you don't want to get thrashed by, and he was right next to me. And I was like, not popping up for air, dude. I'm just going to pass out, and turn her back around, came back, and you could see like the color goes away, and then everything starts kind of closing in, and I hit my head at the other end of the pool. So I made it, and I came up and I said, I feel fine, Sergeant, and like, shaking and whatnot, and trying to catch my breath and not pass out. And then that instructor was kind of like speechless, but like pointing underwater, like, hey, trying to get the other instructor's attention. And probably one of the greatest feats of strength I've ever seen. And one of the instructor dives down. It's a 9-foot pool, gets the dude that's at the bottom. His name is Major Adrian, and pushes up from the very bottom and like throws him up onto the gunnel onto the side of the pool, all in like one motion. It was incredible. And so they pull him out and get him.
And he had blacked out down there.
Yeah, and passing out underwater was, at that time, it was not uncommon. So it didn't happen every day, but it was certainly something that was a pretty regular occurrence. So it wasn't unusual. However, like when they pulled him out, he was like blue. So they, checked him and then just started CPR on him. So pulled all of us out of the pool and put us in the outside area as they started working on him. And then called the ambulance. The ambulance showed up, and they had actually got him back on the way to the hospital. But then when he got to the hospital, he ended up passing away there. So that, he ended up having a heart defect that was a congenital heart defect that nobody could have known that he had. And it, the in-doc course went through an investigation period. And but that was like the first teammate that I lost. And
did you know him pretty well?
I didn't. Excuse me. I'm dying over here. Sorry.
He's like, dude, don't talk shit about me.
Yeah, I was squishing my lungs. No, I didn't really know him very, very well. However, I did spend our entire extended training day, the hell night period. So you start, you never know when it's going to start, the hell night day. You just never know when it's going to start. And you get paired up with a buddy during that time period, and that's your buddy you got to stay with the whole time. So it was this one, ours started at the end of our regular training day. So usually you finish at like 4 or 5 p.m. And so you're usually coming back from the pool or something like that, from afternoon pool session. Mm-hmm. So at this time we got on the bus and we're driving, and we're like, this ain't the normal route home, boys. This is not good. And they pull up, and like all the instructors are waiting. I was like, this is it. This is the ETD. And so that whole next 24 hours I had spent with him as my buddy. And so I was 130 pounds soaking wet, and he was 220, just a stout man. This is a real man. He was 42 years old. He had been a pilot, C-130 pilot for quite some time. And I was like, hey, sir, you're almost twice as big as me. Just so you know, when they start doing it pays to be winner, we're not winning anything. You're gonna be
I'm not carrying your ass, dude.
We are gonna be suffering, dude. And he's like, it's okay, man, it's okay. We got this. And sure enough, there was one exercise where, we had to carry each other, and they made me carry him, and you had to do.
They probably love that too. Like, oh, dude, make the small one carry him.
So I'm carrying him, and you're having to do lunges with him on my back, and it was just over and over and over again. I got some
water there too if you need it.
Yeah. These things I should have known. You mean make that stuff come up.
I know. Yeah, I was reading the label of that can because I got that in my cup. Did you know DuPont?
Say again?
DuPont makes the shit in those drinks.
What is that?
DuPont is the company. They made Kevlar vests and Teflon pans, and they got sued for all the PFA stuff.
Really?
I looked at the side of that can, and all of the ingredients, the trademark stuff, is all DuPont Chemical Company.
Interesting. So they got I got Kevlar in the body now. Yeah. So anyway, I was doing these lunges, these walking lunges with him on my back, and we were last every single time. But yeah.
So he was 40. So did he black out in the pool and just somebody didn't catch it fast enough, or was it the heart defect got him right away?
I think his heart rate, you could see if you looked back at it now. This was, I think, week 5 or 6, maybe 6 or 7. Either way, you start doing, every Monday you do a test. You're doing a physical test to pass this next portion of the course. And as we got to week 5 and beyond, you could see the runs where he was not leading the pack anymore. And he was one of the top dudes in the course. And then all of a sudden, I'm a terrible runner. And now he's running next to me. And I'm like, man, he's hurting. And at that time, you just think it's us because he's older.
Yeah.
But I think his heart just couldn't keep up anymore.
Damn. And did they do an autopsy and they discovered that?
Yeah.
Man. So you're probably mid-20s, early 20s when that happened?
I was 20. I was 20.
So do you think that affected you more later on, or how'd that affect you?
It's a good question. I've never been asked that. I think that was something that helped. I mean, it helped me at that moment because I had realized, I was like, okay, this is what I signed up for. I was ready. This is the first loss. And this, how I handle this loss is how I'm going to handle all of them. And so I wasn't, I don't even think I cried. I didn't really process it because I had a mission to do, which was finish the course. And I was so focused on that. And then as it progressed on, and as my career progressed on and I started losing more teammates, I think I treated it almost the same way until the last one. And that was really the straw that broke the camel's back for me was my last loss.
What was your last loss?
The last loss was the one that changed the trajectory of my life, essentially. And that was one of the guys on my team, or he wasn't even on my team, but he went on a training evolution with me in October of 2019. And his name was Peter. And we were, part of our job is mountain rescue. And this was more built to be a morale trip where we're supposed to hang out, have a good time, relearn each other. Because traditionally at that particular unit, you farm out to these other squadrons, and you really don't see your Air Force team anymore. You go out into these other squadrons, and you have these Army and Navy teams that you're a part of. And those are your boys that you become super good friends with. And once you're done with that cycle, you come back and you got to relearn who you guys are. So you want to come back and build the team back up and have a good time. So that's what that portion was as we transferred over to a new cycle. And so we went out to do that climbing trip and supposed to be super chill in Boise, Idaho. And then on the second day, went out and finished out some climbs for the day. And ideally I wanted, like, we had just finished a climb. It was like 3:30 or 4 p.m. or something like that. And I was like, man, I think we're dead. I think we locked enough training for today. And, we're cleaning stuff up. And I asked the guy that was with me, I was like, hey, what are they doing over there? He's like, I don't know. I think they're cleaning up. So I walk over, and one of the guys was already halfway up this pitch. And I was like, dang, I wanted to be done. and I was like, hey, what do we got going on here? And he's like, hey, we're going to do the same thing that we did yesterday. We'll just have him lead up, and then everybody's going to go up behind him, and then we'll set up rappel, come back down. I was like, yeah, all right, this will take like 30 minutes. So one of the guys led the route up, set up an anchor, and then a few more guys went, and I was the last one. There's 5 of us.
And rock climbing up this face.
Yeah, rock climbing up it's about a 60 to 70 foot face. And I, as I kind of just took in the scenery, standing on a rock and just watching these guys climb. And then I was the last one up. And as I was getting ready to go up, or one of the PJs that got to the top, he started setting up another anchor that was right next to the climbing one. So then you had one that's for rappel. And so these were in chains, and I was like, okay, cool. Like, that's just to make things go faster, because then we can just transition right over that and just rappel down. We'll be done quicker. And like the chains were just really low compared to like what they normally are comfortably. So you had to like, there was a moment of free fall that you might be in to get to weight the chains, because the chains are usually like 12 inches long. And then those things were like, about a foot or two below the edge. So you had to like really control yourself down, and it's even tough for experienced climbers. And so some of the guys that were with us were not super. I mean, they don't climb. Their other job is combat control. Like they don't do PJ stuff. So this wasn't all PJs. So that one of them had a difficult time getting over. So it was like, hey, the Peter wanted to move that anchor back further so that he could just weight the system and then go down. And so you wouldn't have that free fall, which is.
And Peter was a PJ?
Peter was a PJ, yeah. And so it's a good mindset, and it's the right thing to do for your team. However, there's risk. There's risk involved. And now you don't have a bolt-in rock, and now you got to rely on whatever anchor you build. And so after some exchanges back and forth, he moves that anchor back. The first guy starts his rappel, gets down safely as I'm climbing. I get to the top, and I start talking about the anchor that I built, and I ask, hey, did anybody like, hey, did you go check that out? He's like, no, but he says it's good. And I also just watched the dude just rappel down, so it's good. So as our second guy gets to the edge, he starts going over, and then you kind of hear like a shift of the anchor, like a pop. And I was like, hey, Peter, what was that? And he goes back and he looks at it and tugs on some things, and he's like, I think the cam that he put in place, or the nut, it was just setting deeper into the rock. And so I was like, okay, that makes sense. So as the next guy goes down, he gets about halfway down, and then you hear just kind of like a shotgun blast, like an explosion of rock. And then just like rope, you see rope. He was about 10 feet from where we were, and that rope kind of goes sliding by, and then Peter going with it. And
so you saw Peter to your right just going down.
Yeah, so if I was facing this way and talking about the anchor system that I typically build with the other PJ that was with me, I could see out of heard that explosion turn this way, and then just saw him like fly back this way. And so he whipped off of that cliff. And so what happened is the weight of the second rappeller, as he got about halfway down, in the cam and the nut that were in the rock failed. And the anchor piece that he chose to use was a quad anchor. And so that meant like there's about 20 inches between the knots. And so that the weight is being pulled from the center of that 20 inches. So if one side fails, it's going to slide half of that. So it's going to slide 10 inches. And then that 10 inches is going to shock load the other side. And so because that's 10 inches slid, it shock loaded that other side and blew that rock. And so now both pieces went, and now you had no more anchor. Peter did what he was trained to do, which is tie into the anchor. And in case he slipped, he doesn't fall. And that's the standard practice. But that's the thing that killed him, is because he was tied into that anchor, and the guy that was falling, as he fell, the rope tightened, and then it pulled the anchor, which then pulled Peter because he was tied into the system. And so as Peter was trying to resist it, there was no more, and it was it was 30 feet for this guy to fall, and then it was 60 plus feet for Peter to fall. So as he fell, he landed on his back onto like the very stone that I was standing on before the climb, and like dead center onto that stone, and bounced over and to his face. And the first guy that rappelled down ran in to him, and at first you could hear kind of like a noise coming from him, and so in my mind, I'm just running through injuries in my mind as I'm getting ready to go down. And I looked over at the other PJ with me, and I said, "Hey, are you good to rappel? Like, I'm not going to be here to watch you set your stuff up. You need to take a breath and slow down and rappel safely. I can't have you fall." So I rappelled down, and then got to Peter, and looked, listened, felt, and just confirmed what the other guy had told me, that he couldn't feel pulse anymore, that he wasn't breathing. So we flipped him over, and you could see some injuries that he had, but went straight into some CPR with him and calling 911 and working on him for about 25 minutes, and ultimately ended up having to. As I tried to intubate him, I couldn't guarantee that I could place the ET tube in his trachea. I couldn't visualize the cords, and I didn't want to manipulate his neck too much because I felt like he had a broken neck. And so I was like, I got to crike him. So I ended up criking him, and then one of the guys, I felt resistance as I was bagging, so we ended up doing a field thoracotomy on him. So essentially a chest tube without the tube. And so as we cut into his side and rolled him over, you could see just a bunch of blood pour out. And so we knew that he had a hemothorax, and just plug that thing up, because we didn't have blood. Like if you drain out all that blood, there's nowhere else. Now you just leave that space open for more blood to enter into. I only got blood to replace, so allow that section to fill up and at least try to occlude some of the blood and just stop more bleeding from happening. And then it took about, it took a while. There's a lot of lessons learned on that one, and there was a lot of assumptions that we made. One of the assumptions is that because we're working in a mountain area, that they had life flight with hoist capability, and the life flight did not have a hoist capability. And the other assumption that's typically made is because we're registered paramedics and we're PJs and we're high speed, and we expect people to know who we are until it's time to activate a med plan. And calling the dispatcher, and I'm like, "Hey, I need you to launch a life flight." And they're like, "We can't just launch a life flight because you're saying so." And I'm, begging them to launch the life flight, and letting them know who I am, and we're doing CPR. And
it's like, I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. And that, we're at the top of a mountain, like we're about 400 foot, maybe 200 feet of elevation, 200, 300 feet of elevation rise, and about 400 plus of distance that a fire truck would have to park and then get them up to us. So it's a long way back. And so we got him in a Skedco, and once the firefighters got to us, one dude booked it. He was hauling. He got it to us pretty quickly, and he had the monitor. And as they started showing up, I told the other guys that were really working and still had hope, told them to step aside. And for me, I was bagging Peter, and I could just see like the blue in his lips starting to show up, and everything start to relax. And I was like, I know the statistics, I know the trauma statistics, and he's in cardiac arrest from trauma. There's a very low chance that we're getting him back, and especially the distance we have to go. And so I was preparing my mind for everything that was going to come next. And as those guys started cleaning up what we had, like just the training stuff that we had, just to give him something to do, they had set up the pads on him and put the monitor on him, and I knew, like, what was going to come up, and a systole came up, and I asked them to turn the monitor off and check the cables and do it again, and they did it again, same result, and that was it. That was like kind of like everything that I had done for the past 15 years, like all culminating to that one instance of that one problem that I could not change. Like everything was put into question, and now like the realization of my worst nightmare of he was married. He had at that time a 1 or 2 year old, and then his wife was pregnant at the time. And I'm going to have to call my boss and tell him that one of my guys just died. And he's not even my guy. He's a guest from another team. And then that's going to go to the squadron, and the squadron commander is going to have to call the group commander. And then they're going to have to send a team over to Peter's family's house and do the notification process. And so all these things were going through my mind, and I'm like, I'm going to have to go back and face the squadron and let them know that I'm the one responsible for his death. And, just processing that was about like all of that at the same time was, I visualized the memorial, the funeral. And yeah, at that moment I quit. I tried to quit. I told my boss, I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm done. I'm done. We put him in a body bag at the bottom of the hill, and pinned a flag on his body bag as we normally do overseas. And so that was the hardest one I've ever done. And I said, this is the last flag I'm going to pin on a body. I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. And my boss said, he was like, well, you can't just quit right now. You have a team that's still out there that's relying on you to get them home. But you have some stuff admin stuff that needs taken care of first. And so we took care of all that stuff, and then went back to the unit, and then I pulled myself off a team for a couple months.
Now, at that point, had you ever done that before? Or were you just workflow, kind of walling all this up till then?
As far as like processing emotions?
Yeah, feeling all of that.
Not really, not to that extent. You had teammates who had either taken their own lives, teammates that had been lost in combat and whatnot, and people you treat that you work hard on, that you're just so focused, but you're overseas and you work hard on that, on what you're doing to save the life. And then like you still have a job to do. You still have a deployment to finish. And so you really close off. Like it's really a switch that you just like, okay, I just turn off those emotions, and
you're prepped for it. You got a job to do. It's the next day.
Right. And then by the time you're going home from that deployment, you've already switched off that event. That event is no longer like exists in your mind. And so you're like, all right, like we've moved past it. However, it's still like it's like a little demon that's sitting here in this corner that's waiting for the next one to pop up. And then like you just keep pushing that down into the trenches, and so like, oh, like you're not there. You're not really there.
And so do you think like that being unexpected was a big piece? Like obviously you knew Peter, and then you guys you were home.
Yes. And so, yeah, we were in stateside training, and it was supposed to just be a chill morale trip. And we were talking about where we were going to dinner that night. So the unexpectedness of that happening is really, I was not mentally prepared for that, to be coming home with less guys than I left with.
And so that was in 2019. So did you eventually get out shortly after that, or how'd that shake out?
Yeah. So I pulled myself off of team for a couple months, and then came back after leveraging a lot of resources. That unit was a tier unit in the special operations world. And so we have access to a lot of care. They take care of you like a professional athlete. So you had psychologists, neuropsychologists, dietitians, strength coaches, athletic trainers, physiotherapists. You had essentially all of them in one building, and they look at you as an individual, and they go, okay, this person's experiencing this. And they do a highly focused treatment on you as a person. And so it's you become friends with them. You walk over to that building, and those are your people. That's the people you count on. And so I use them quite a bit in that 2 months of off time to essentially figure out how to process all of these emotions.
And so up until then, how many deployments did you have 2019?
That was nine deployments.
So you had 9 deployments. Up until then, had you ever taken a pause and kind of unpacked any of this, or?
We would typically have like a reset week when you come back from a deployment. So you do like a week of like processing, like, or a week of like meet with a therapist and, get your blood labs drawn and talk to folks.
I guess where you sought it out.
Yeah, no. So it was just like, I'm good. I don't need it. Like, it was just like it was like another one of those check of the box kind of things. But now like something was afoot. And so like I had to address these things. Unfortunately, I knew where to go. Mm-hmm. I just didn't know the questions to ask. And now like I got guided on the therapy and all the issues that I had been pushing down for as long as I was. And so as I came out of that and the team was like, hey, Steve, do you think you can come back? What do you think? And I was like, you know what? I think I will. And we're coming up on this alert cycle. So I'll come back and do the alert. And
what's an alert cycle?
Just standing by for anything that's a contingency response for anything that happens in the world. Let's say a hostage gets taken. You're on an alert, and within a certain amount of time, you get a notification. You got to be, responding to the base and get information, and then be on an aircraft.
Because this is a tier 1 unit. This isn't standard units where you're kind of getting a workup. This is you're on call.
Right. Correct. Yeah. You have to be. You can't leave a certain radius of that area that you're working in. So I was like, yeah, I'll take the alert cycle, and because me being off now had somebody who was pulling from their job, what they were originally doing. And so I came back on, and then within 24 hours of coming back, we got launched on a notice on a contingency response. And so I was like, okay, well, back at it, I guess. And so got alerted, went out on that deployment, and it was a really big, like, it was a confidence booster for me as a team leader, because there were some difficult decisions that had to be made to move some people around. And
where'd y'all go?
I can't say.
Okay. What happened when you first got back?
So fortunately that deployment was successful. The people that needed killing got killed, and it was a couple months. So I got back in 2020.
So were you part of the direct action team on that, or were you in the PJ support role?
Correct. Or? Yeah. So direct action support. Yep. So embedded with the tiers, and so we came back from that, and I got on a bus, and actually my grandfather, he was really sick with pancreatic cancer, and so my dad had called me actually when I landed from this deployment, and I was on the bus to go back to the unit and pick up my stuff and head home, and talk to him on the phone. My dad essentially put him on the phone in his, on his bed in the hospital, and said, hey, he's not going to make it through the night, and was able to say some last words to him, and he ended up passing away within a few minutes after that. And so that was pretty tough for me to
and process. You knew that he had cancer.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
You just didn't know when.
Right. And so that was difficult, because it's tough seeing him the way he was, and how I knew him as a child. And
do you feel like that incident with Peter, which was fairly recent, kind of started cracking that wall you had built up over the years?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And so that was like, dang, that was another loss and another loss, and they just kept piling up, another loss. And
what happened after your grandfather?
Well, just more teammates just taking their own lives and whatnot. And so it just felt like, the black cloud was always nearby. And so after getting home from that contingency deployment, we were scheduled to go on a regular deployment, so our planned deployment, within a couple of months of returning from that one. And so I was staging like, hey, this is where we're going to go. This is what's going to happen. And then in the investigation, so after every accident, especially involving a military mishap and a loss of life, there's an investigation. There's two investigations: a safety investigation and an accident investigation. And one's has punitive action and one has just information. Push out, hey, this is factual, this is what happened, and here's how we can prevent that from happening again. And so both investigations came out, and you know, I think there were some discrepancies in some of the things that were reported in it, but you know, it's neither here nor there. However, the safety investigation found, hey, there's nobody could have changed what happened. You guys couldn't have predicted it. You guys could not have prevented it. However, we, the military, are going to hold you accountable for the loss of life. And so because of that, I was the team leader. I was removed from the unit and essentially given a very short amount of time to PCS and to move to a different squadron.
How'd you feel about that?
That was devastating. I mean, it was devastating in like, you know, I just got fired from the one place that I had really fought to be at. I really wanted to be at. I had 7 deployments with them.
And who was this unit?
This was at the 24th STS. It was at our Tier 1 unit. And so I had several deployments with them and given a lot of time, and it was just like no regard of like me, who I was, and even like I had told my psychologist as we had gotten called in to go do this meeting with a group commander, and I was like, well, I guess I'm gonna go get fired, and she was like, yeah, you're not gonna get fired and whatnot, and I came out and I was like, I got fired.
And you had no say in this.
No, and you know, the one thing that really mentally saved me was the squadron leadership. So the squadron commander and the squadron chief both had my back, and they went down and fell on their sword with me. And so they also got fired, and they got fired because they refused to punish me for the accident. They refused to, they were asked, hey, what are you going to do with Steve? And I was like, nothing. Like, you know, we'll give him an LOR and that'll sit. And, but he's, you know, he experienced something terrible. And if we give him an opportunity, he can be a really great leader within the squadron. And they took that information, and then the next day just fired all of us. And
what do you think the motive was for them out for blood like that?
Well, there were some people in position of power at that time within the AFSOC community that just specifically just despised special tactics in general, and were looking for opportunities to enter into the place that was impenetrable, which was the 24th. Mm-hmm. And this was that opportunity to essentially remove the dome of the shield that was over top of that unit and cast a microscope on top of that unit.
Fucking politics.
And say, oh, yep, see, now we can start putting our finger in here and start adjusting and doing the things we want. And so when that happened, you know, I had a couple options. I was either stay in and go to this unit, which that one was going to be in Vegas, where I had been stationed before and almost ruined my marriage and my life. Because of Vegas? It just, there's a lot of bad influences and bad experiences there with poor decisions on my part. And me going back there in the mental state that I was, it was not going to be a good situation for me and my family. So in order to keep and maintain the care that I was getting, I mean, I was left with almost no choice but to pull the trigger and say, yeah, like diagnosing me with PTSD, you know, and push the button to medically retire me. And so that's what happened. And not just with me, but you saw about 20 other guys in the unit that were just like, I'm out of here. Yeah. If they could do that to Steve, or they can do that to, and now like our top cover with our squadron commander and squadron chief, if that's gone, like we're out. And so
just good guys and just stabbing them right in the back.
You saw a lot of really very talented individuals, highly skilled individuals that were putting up with their pains, their aches, their emotional distress because they loved the mission, they loved the job, and that was what they were there for. And then you saw like an individual who has been waiting to get their fingers into this squadron, and they're like, bad things are going to happen now. And essentially it was like just an exposed, part of the armor that that ultimately led to some challenges that they had to go through for the 2 years after that.
Did you ever personally feel any responsibility or guilt with what happened with Peter?
I always do.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll never go away. No matter how many times people tell me not to, I know that there was a specific exchange between him and I about the rope and where it was to be placed. And, I had an opportunity to just be the TL and say, no, we're not moving that. And at that moment in time, the thought process I had was, okay, I'm going to empower him because he's also a TL in the unit. He's experienced. He knows what he was actually more experienced climber than me. So he knew what he was doing, but I knew, I don't know, I could have just said, no, you're not doing that. You just do what I say. But I wanted to empower team leaders to be leaders. And unfortunately, that's going to be something that I live with for forever.
Look, that was in 2019.
Mm-hmm.
So looking back, do you feel like everything in your life happened for a reason?
I do. I mean, there's unfortunate circumstances that I'll never change and I'll always regret and I'll always want back. But there is good that can come of that. And so that led to me starting the nonprofit. That led to me, retiring, getting out and figuring out what to do with Second Life, and then starting a nonprofit, which has now impacted, hundreds of people. And in fact, in some of their testimonies, some of their words of saving their life. I don't take that lightly. If some of these people showed up to our program and in such dire distress, and what we've done for them or what they've done for themselves through their work, has changed them completely. Yeah. And it would have never happened if Peter didn't pass.
And it's like looking back and people I've talked to and your story, and I mean, I don't know if you're religious or not, but stories from the Bible. It seems like these pivotal moments, this pain, these tribulations, like all of this stuff can lead to better things. And it's almost how we have to learn our lessons, almost.
Yeah. I'll touch on that. So I had grown up Catholic, and after joining the military and going on several deployments and seeing some terrible things done in the name of people's religion, I just lost faith. I was like, man, how could a God work in this fashion? Like they're killing each other and doing horrible things to children and
was there one that really stood out to you?
Just seeing, especially the rise of ISIS, was just like, man, like the horrible ways that people are dying, and how could a God exist if kids are dying of cancer and these horrible atrocities are taking place, and so just seeing a lot of that gore and pain was something that I lost faith in, and it wasn't until Peter's accident and a very specific instance that brought me back. And so at his funeral is in a church, and we had gotten there, and I'm sitting there, and the family played a video on the screen, and this is the first time I heard Peter talking since the accident. And he's talking to his congregation. He was a man of faith, so that was one thing he was very proud of. So he's talking to his congregation. He's talking to the audience. And what he's describing is a story. He went to Virginia Tech for college, and he was there during the time of that mass shooting many, many years ago. And one of his friends was either killed or injured during that. And he didn't go to school that day because he was feeling sick. And he felt terrible because he was not able to be there and change whatever was taking place. And because of that, he was talking about the emotions he was going through and the struggles he had with his faith at that time. And as he was describing the struggles, it was the exact things that I was experiencing.
Damn.
And it was like I couldn't look at the screen, and I was really just my face in my hands, emotionally falling apart. And it was, everything he was saying was what I was experiencing, the exact emotions. And he talked about what pulled him out of that, and how he was able to get through those dark times, those challenges that he had. And I was like, okay, there's no way that that's a coincidence, that voice, the one thing that could have probably changed my outlook on questioning this, was the one thing that was being played, and the very message that was being played. And just felt like everything went away,
and like
it was
talking
just
directly to you.
Right. And so one of my buddies, he is a pastor over in North Carolina, and really good friend. And I was like, hey man, can we talk and like just teach me what he believed in, and just like how can the things that the loss that his family experienced, how can they be doing better than I am? I'm falling apart here, and they're carrying themselves with such grace. I want them to hate me, and they don't hate me.
Yeah.
And so he read some things and gave me some verses to read, and one of them is Romans 8:28, which I have inscribed on our coin that we hand out. But it's all things work together for good for those who love the Lord and call according to His purpose. And that really hit me hard, because I was like, man, like there's a lot of bad that are out there, but you can either let that bad guide you in a direction that's not meant to be. It's not meant to be that bad, traumatic, dark pathway. That's the devil, that's Satan, guiding you down these dark paths. You can take this terrible instance and turn it into good in some way, in some form, and it may take time, and you may not see it right away, but there will be in some regard, there will be some sort of good that comes out of this. And so if you can look at it through that way, and if you can follow and trust in the Lord, He will guide you down to that path. And fortunately, that trust was me starting the nonprofit, and I didn't know how to do it. Didn't have any degree. I never ran a business. That was the most right path that was laid before me.
Damn.
And being able to take Peter's story in my experience of recovering or going through treatment, and offering that to others, and being able to say, at least, Peter's loss will never be in vain, and it will always be helping somebody else out. And that's what I want it to be. That's what I want his legacy to continue to be. When I finish out a course and I deliver a coin to each of them, his ops initials are inscribed on there, and then the Romans 8:28 is on there. And as much as I desperately would love, and I would change everything about that day, without that day happening, none of the good that we've ever done would have happened.
Yeah, that's amazing, man. And it's like, guys join the military and they'll sacrifice their life out there in combat for their country, for their guys that they're with. But in a way, like, looking back, if we're trusting God's plan, I mean, that's Peter's way of his sacrifice in God's plan to live through you and through other people to create all these great things.
Yeah, and I think the thing that he really was, I think, would be the most proud of, and the most, that his main goal, his mission in life, was not, strive to be a great PJ, right? Strive to be great father and a great husband, and he wasn't great at all those things, and such a good human being. But his primary mission in life was to guide others to Christ, and
really?
and in his belief, and he would never push it on anybody. He never made you uncomfortable. But that's what brought him joy. That's what would bring him joy, and I think that's what would, knowing that at least he changed me.
Damn.
And was able to bring me closer.
So did you go back to Catholicism?
No, just traditional Christianity, and really less of a organized religion, and just more just following the word and living as Christ did.
Damn. Well, on that, we're going to take a pee break.
Sure.
And we're back. So you did 10 deployments total.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So that first Afghan deployment, you came back. Was it 6 months, a year before your next one?
It was actually it was about 2 years. So I came back from that one, and then, so I was stationed out in Okinawa, and then I was leaving Okinawa in 2011, and right before I was leaving, the earthquake and tsunami hit for mainland Japan. So huge wave hits mainland Japan, and we're in South Korea doing an exercise, and then they say, "All right, we got to respond to this." The unit that I was assigned to is going to go do some response to the hurricane to the tsunami and open up airfields.
Is that normal for PJs to also do like domestic support like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So like you saw a lot of PJs doing, especially stateside, they do a lot of hurricane relief. A lot of the guard units will do that. And so like any kind of humanitarian, especially overseas, like Haiti, the Thailand, the cave rescue for PJs were on that. So typically we got our fingers in just about everything. You just don't really ever see it.
Yeah.
Because our marketing is terrible.
I know I was talking to earlier this morning, a buddy, he's a recon Marine. And he's like, yeah, like you never hear about them. They're like the one soft group, no one ever. Like
yeah, we have a terrible marketing stream, and but we have our fingers in just about everything out there. So we went out and did, at least open up some runways and try to do some recoveries there. And so it was an eye-opening experience to do a big humanitarian rescue like that, and flying around and just seeing the widespread devastation of that area. And so it was wild to see, and then just the amount of aftershocks. You never realize, that one big earthquake, but there was like 800 aftershocks after that.
I think it was some type of geology class or something, but we wrote that down. It might have been that tsunami in 2011 we did a study on, and it showed, like how whoever tracks those, all those little micro shocks.
There's a certain amount of 6.0, a certain amount of 5.6s, and it just goes down and down. So there's hundreds and hundreds of very small ones, and there's 20s of tens and 20s of your larger ones. But you can feel it as you're getting in there, and we're climbing through these spaces, and all of a sudden everything's shaking. You're like, oh, I better get out of here because I don't want this thing to structure collapse on me. And it was just wild to see the devastation. You go up to went up to a gas station, and you just see these cars are stacked up as high as the roof, and there's just the way that the water was pushing all this stuff and pushed it up into this area. And I was like, how in the world if somebody's stuck up there, how am I going to get to them? And so you just realize how little I can affect as a PJ on a mass scale like that. I can only do I can cut open a car and pull one person out, but there's hundreds of thousands of people that need help, and you're flying out to sea or flying around the melting down reactor. And
that's crazy. The natural disaster and the mass casualty, the scale of that. It's crazy.
Right. Exactly. And, if we had to fly out to sea to get around the Fukushima reactor, to at least get outside of a specific radius.
Now, did that happen because of that tsunami?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And so...
And did that leak radiation, or what happened with that?
Yeah, there's radiation leaking everywhere. And so you had to wear a dosimeter. And I was a young senior airman or staff sergeant at the time, and E4, E5. And they're like, hey, all right, wear this thing, and you're flying around, and just make sure the number doesn't get above this number. And if it does, tell us. So I was like, in my mind, a young guy just wants to go out and do the thing. I'm like, that means to me, if it gets above this number, I don't get to do the thing that I want to do anymore.
So I'm not telling you shit.
Right. And so it's all right, whatever. And so the cumulative amount that I was receiving, so I never got above that number, but every day we were doing that. And so I was getting exposed to this radiation every single day.
That's crazy.
And then, and so it's I didn't really take it seriously, or as seriously as I should have, and make sure everything's logged in there. So my med records just say exposed to radiation, and it doesn't really say the amount or
and you look back as an older man now, and you're like, God, that's so fucking stupid.
Right. When we came back from that, you had to take a test where they put this little Geiger counter or something like that on your thyroid and different glands, and I failed, and they're like, hey, you failed this test. And I was like, what do I do? And they're like, oh, go home and wash, take a good shower, or wash that, get rid of that shirt.
That's not how tomorrow. Radiation works.
and I did that, and I failed again. And they're like,
oh shit.
I was like, hey, what do I do? They're like, go do it again, and if you fail again, then we'll figure out the next steps. Did it again, got rid of that shirt, showered, and they came back and they're like, all right, you're good. And I was like, okay, cool, back to work.
Yeah.
And I didn't like make sure that I was getting that stuff logged, and I was like, man, that was a mistake. Now that I went through the VA process and whatnot, and I was like, hey, by the way, I got exposed to a lot of radiation, and
they're like, prove it.
Exactly. And I'm like, all right, whatever. Like,
all right, fuck me. All right.
Yeah. And so.
So did you have any major rescues out there?
Unfortunately, like not. I mean, we open up some airways. I think the open up the airspaces and airports. I think what we did. There's a lot of isolated people, isolated groups that needed more like resupplies and things like that. There was a couple like people that
and probably the local forces and stuff did all the immediate rescues probably.
Yeah, there was a lot of immediate rescues that were done by the Japanese Air Force and rescue forces there, but it was mostly like there's a lot of dead, and we they're very protective of their nationalities dead, so you don't really handle their dead. You can mark it, identify it, but you're not really putting them in body bags and whatnot. So we kind of left that to them, and you could tell and identify where the dead were.
Did you identify a bunch of dead out there?
Not really, not a lot. I mean, you could tell we would fly over different villages that were just like devastated by the tsunami, and you could smell it and be like, there's this entire village is gone. Like they're definitely wiped out.
Did you take any videos flying in the helicopter like over that destruction?
Yeah, so I've got several pictures of that. And
I'll talk to you after.
Yeah. So it's. I think the thing that that we impacted at least the most was being able to resupply these different areas. So bringing all these different things like medications and food and blankets and whatnot, just to keep, because it was freezing out, and even going out and looking at plans of like these houses got wiped into this like now river is there, and maybe we do a dive mission in there, which never got approved, and flying like 25 miles out to sea, and there's like a line of debris, the entire coastline of Japan, because if you think about the water came in and then it receded all back out at the same time. So there's like houses floating out there and semi trucks and all kinds of things just floating around.
That's crazy. What I heard, I think when I was studying those tsunamis, is like Japan has their architecture and their buildings are like specifically designed to try and withstand tsunamis and earthquakes and stuff like that, because there's so much.
Right. Yeah. So you didn't see a lot of structures going down. You saw just like people just getting wiped out, and like houses, residential areas, or like cars, and like you'd see like a big boat on top of a building.
That's crazy.
Like, you're like, how the heck did that thing get up there?
Yeah. I'm glad I'm not like in the cleanup crew on this.
Right.
Crazy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that's a good range of experience the first like 2 years, Afghan, that. So what was the next kind of major deployment that you had?
Yeah, so I deployed with the rescue squadron, different mission set. So that was again to Afghanistan, and now you're in a rescue squadron. You're working as a team of PJs and combat rescue officers, and you're doing point of injury, CASEVAC, or patient transfers, just depending on the assets in the area and what they have. So, if a group gets in a firefight, mass casualty, downed aircraft, somebody gets stung by a scorpion, they send up a 9-line that goes to essentially a triage center that looks at it and goes, okay, we're going to shift this 9-line to these people because this group, whether it's the Air Force or the Army's dust off, and then they go farm that out that way. So we are essentially, for lack of a better term, are stuck to a radio like a firefighter would be. And then you get a call on the radio, and then you go respond and have a certain amount of time to get off the ground and go fly towards whatever that might be. And so that was 2012 and 13 that I was doing those deployments. And
were there really any involved injuries or patients or things you worked that really tested your skills out there?
Yeah, I think there was, when you're working in the Bagram, like central Afghanistan area, in East Afghanistan, you start like there's elevation that you have to contend with, so you have to make decisions on weight restrictions if we're going to go do a hoist on a patient that's, you know, at an elevation of 6,000 feet or greater or something like that, you know, and depending on the season, you know, if it's summer or winter, and typically I was always deployed in the summer, you had to decide. I flew as the team leader for both of those, or for those deployments. And so I had to decide, okay, who am I bringing if I had to leave somebody behind, and then what equipment am I taking off? And then like making decisions on like risk versus reward. Like, you know, at that time, UAVs were crashing quite a bit, and there were sensitive items like comms boxes and things on those UAVs that the, you know, different commanders wanted back. And me as a team leader, I'm like, man, you're gonna have me risk my dude's lives for a robot?
Yeah.
And now those things are crashing all over the place. And I'm like, so a lot of times I would, even though the guys are anxious and they're trying to, like, you know, chomping at the bit to get out there and get their feet on the ground. And
It's like, guys, this one isn't working.
yeah, I'm like, I look at them, and because they're like, come on, see, let's go do that. I'm like, no. And I go, here, you want me to go tell your family that you got killed to go pick up a robot?
Yeah.
I was like, hard pass. Like, they can go drop a bomb on that thing if they really want it.
Easy.
Like, they put a EOD guy on the ground, blow it up. Like, it's not that big of a deal, unless it was a very specific, sensitive one. But even then, we're not the ones to go get that. There's a different group. So
do you have to pick up any or a lot of kids or any kids on any of those deployments?
yeah, which was wild to see. Like, you know, as my kid at that time, like, well, my kids, they probably had an unfair perspective when they would get hurt and they would start crying, and I would get frustrated with them, and I would say, I was like, man, I watched kids, you know, their age with bullet holes in them not crying, and you guys are crying about like a splinter. And so like that was that looking back now, I was like, man, I was a dick. But yeah, so you typically for the kids, you're either picking them up because they're playing with a projectile or like a 40 millimeter round, or they step on something, you know, ID or something, they get blown up, or they're just a casualty in the fray, in the firefight. So yeah, I had to pick up several kids. It was usually just gunshot wounds or burns on their hands.
And how does that work? Would you kind of pick them up, stabilize them, and send them back off to their village? Like, was there any secondary care out there in Afghanistan, or not really?
For me, it was, you know, they have their, you know, their escort, whoever's, you know, their parents that's coming with them, and pick them up, treat them, and then I get them to the hospital, and then my hands are wiped clean. That's them. Like, what their journey is after that, I don't know. I did my job. So I don't know what that looks like for them.
Yeah, the reason I asked, when we were in Iraq and I was in, I guess, kind of a role too, and we had guys come in and we'd stabilize them, or they'd be like double amputees and like a VBID or something, and we'd get them patched up, and we're going to send them back off to Baghdad. And a lot of times I was talking to like the doctors that were working there, kind of knew the area, and like, yeah, that guy's probably gonna be dead in like by next year because
infections,
and he's not gonna get like the level of care you would get in America.
Right. Yeah, I had to do the one time that I had to do some sick call, and he had gotten like blown up, or he had an injury that just was never addressed. And I looked at it and I was like, hey dog, like you need some significant debridement, and you need some antibiotics. You need to go see like a real doctor because this is highly infected. And he's like, I'm not going to go do that. And I was like, okay, well, you're going to be dead in like at least 6 months because that infection is going to spread to your body. You're going to get sepsis.
It's crazy. Like, I mean, there's a lot of issues with American healthcare system, but yeah, you go to some of these places, Africa, Afghanistan, Iraq, like we were in Jordan, and like seeing the Jordanian like healthcare capabilities. You're like, man, a lot of these people are fucked.
Yeah. And I even look back at, if you look at just our system, like our system has flaws, right? There's a lot of flaws in our system, but like with some of the folks that we work with when we're training other partner forces, they don't have, like, they're not like, they ain't getting a Purple Heart, and they're not getting 10% you know, per body injury. Like there's a lot of people that have gotten shot multiple times, and they're legitimately fighting for their freedom, and and they're not getting like these benefits afterwards. Not like, hey, like tax-free benefits and free meals on Veterans Day. Like that's like they're there joining that military because they're fighting against evil, against ISIS, and that's what like. So I do have to go back and like I have my complaints about the systems that we have, but then I have to ground myself and go, well, at least I'm not having to like legitimately fight for my freedom against a terrible organization that's rising up and killing all of my friends and family.
Crazy. Did you, on any of your deployments, did you lose any of your buddies in combat?
Yeah, several. I mean, I lost several buddies in combat. A lot of times you're either not quite right there, or at least for me, I wasn't either quite right there.
Do you remember the first one?
Let me think back here.
Or the one that really hit you the most?
Gosh, that's a good question here. I think when you look at the ones that the people that were close to me, that really impacted me, I think having the ability to try to change it helps. Like when I'm trying to treat one of my buddies, but I would say really the ones that I wasn't there for sucked. Like helicopter crashes with former teammates on there, and having gone to a lot of helicopter crashes and pull bodies out of there and going like, man, like a lot of times in these helo crashes, they're not dying on impact. They're getting stuck. They're getting trapped by all the stuff inside there. And then they get engulfed in flames and they burn to death. So, whether it's overseas and one in particular, on a deployment, and this was a supporting agency or a supporting group. They come out, and we usually, when we go out and do ops, I usually have them come down and kind of set our CSAR alert, and really more like a recruiting tool to come to the 24th. And it just gave them something to do, and they're flying from a different country to come support us in this particular area that we're at. And there was a changeover, so I had this new crew come over, met them, and then I had ripped out. So we left, and there was a new crew, a new PJ, and guys that were at the place I was. And so that rescue squadron that was supporting the task force that I was a part of, within 2 weeks after us leaving, they were flying on a routine just after an op or just a regular flight, hit some power lines and crashed. And I was like, man, like I was literally just talking to them 2 weeks ago, right? Yeah. And I think the ones that really suck are the ones where guys take their own lives. You see that's the significant change, or like, man, I didn't see that thing coming. Yeah.
What do you think people can do? I mean, there's things you can do, but in those scenarios, I guess advice for people who might have guys in their life that are struggling with that. What's your advice to them?
If they're struggling with those thoughts, yeah, it's a difficult one because typically it's very hard to identify, very hard to, if somebody's making that decision and they're really like adamant about it, it's difficult to change that. They're gonna go find a spot and they're gonna go make that choice. I think if you find yourself in that position, wait. It's typically an emotional decision that takes place in a matter of like 5 to 10 seconds, and a lot of times, like, it's that wave of like despair. Mm-hmm. And if you just wait a little bit, like that wave of despair will go away, and you can start problem solving the next task and the next task. And
yeah, I heard it was morbid humor, but it was somebody talking about statistics and about how dudes were way better at it than women. Because Because dudes grab like a pistol or a shotgun and like they commit. But then a lot of statistics, like with women's, it's like pills, overdose, and then they call somebody and then they survive it. But dudes are pretty good at it.
Yeah, they got access to those, and they especially in our world, they, I don't know, they make that decision. It's hard. Like I had a guy that was at the last unit that I was at, and he just drove out to the woods, and shot himself, and I had several buddies that they just take the gun and just make a bad decision and or an emotional decision at that time, and I'll never know what they were going through, but for you and I know, like if you just take some time, if you've got nowhere else to turn, the good Bible's always right there for you.
Yeah.
And the good word will help guide you through what you need to do.
So it seems like with your nonprofit now, I mean, your whole career as a PJ was helping people in that medical space, healing, and you're kind of doing that now.
Yeah. Certainly not something that I was like, I didn't leave the military going, yeah, you know what I want to do is start a nonprofit. Something I've never even imagined. But it was what fell into my lap. And I knew the space I wanted to be in. I knew I wanted to be in, number one, the sports world of like human performance, fitness and wellness, and just the technology advances behind it. And so I wanted to do that. And so I was going to school to get a entrepreneurship degree and then eventually open a gym and it be kind of like what I had in the military, but offer that to focus on veterans and first responders and be more of like a gym and wellness space and recovery space with these different modalities. And as I started to transition out, I did a couple different programs with mentors and I was like, yeah, here's my plan. I'm going to go to school. I'm going to get a degree. I'm going to do this executive MBA and then I'm going to start this business. And they're like, why are you going to waste a bunch of time going to all those schools?
And then you go to those classes, like the entrepreneur classes or business classes, and like you ask the professor, have you ever owned a business? And they're like, no. I'm like, well, why the fuck am I listening to you?
Yeah. And I was like, and they're like, yeah. And one of the ladies that I was mentoring me, she's like, here's a better way to put it. If you want to start something, if you want to found something, if you want to start a business, you just do it. And like, there's no amount of like knowledge and education that's going to help you more than just getting involved and just starting it. And now if you want it to succeed and continue to grow, then hire somebody with a degree that knows how to manage that business. And I go, that's a good way to put it. So I didn't know fully what that was going to look like. And I had another mentor that was part of an organization called Exos. And he, this is also like divine intervention where he was good friends with a buddy of mine, a PJ at that unit, and I hadn't seen in a long time, and we crossed paths, and I was talking about what I was going to do next. And he's like, can I hook you up with my buddy? I was like, sure. He hooks me up and happens to be this senior level fella at Exos, and followed him for a little bit. And really at a point I was like, hey, Alex, is there going to be a job at the end of this? Because I need a job for when I get out.
So you were still in.
Yeah. This is like right when the Skills Bridge or right before Skills Bridge was like really being developed. And he's like, no, man, there's not really going to be a job for this and for you, but what you need to do is just start. You just need to do what you said you're going to do. I was like, Alex, I don't know how to do that. Where do I go? How do I even conceptualize that? It's alien to me. It's foreign. I don't understand this world at all.
And do you feel like with the military, what I experience is there's clear structures in the military. Hey, you want to be tier 1? Here are the steps you got to do.
Sure.
You want to be a PJ? You got to do that. It's all kind of outlined and structured for you.
Right.
Unlike getting out, you're like,
yeah,
how do I do this?
Right. Yeah. And so at least he gave me he steered me the right direction. Like, hey, okay, well, ask me some pointed questions. Do you want it to be a nonprofit or for profit?
Yeah.
And I said, what's the difference? And he's like, well, do you want them to pay for it on their own, or do you want somebody else to pay for it for them, the people who are receiving the care? And I thought about my situation and how much it's going to cost to just receive care, the care that I received. And I was like, I wouldn't pay for that. I can't afford all that. Yeah. I can't. I'm a rational guy, and you know what my mindset's going to be is I don't need it. And so I'll be fine.
That's so many dudes. It's like myself. you spend money on yourself last.
Yeah, like exactly.
I'm the last person I spend money on.
Yeah, I'll be fine. Yeah. And that was I was like, so I guess it's going to have to be a nonprofit because I know individuals like myself they have other plans to do with the very little money that they do have.
Especially if they're struggling. They're not thinking about spending all that on them.
Right. And so I was like, how do I do that? And so he's like, go to this, company and they'll help you start this, the business. And I didn't know the difference between the LLC and 501c3. So I filed for an LLC and I was like, well, that's the wrong one. And so I had to dissolve that. So ate some money there and then applied for the 501c3 and they're like, hey, you got to get federal approval and you should use like a tax attorney. So I got introduced to a tax attorney who helped me out. And he was like, hey, I need a couple things. I need your articles of incorporation. I need your bylaws and your board of directors. And I was like, okay, what are all those things? So how do I find those?
Yeah.
And he's like, well, your bylaws governs your board of directors. And I was like, who are they?
Yeah.
Whoever you want them to be. Well, how do I define that? So I had to go do a lot of research and figure out, okay, all right, this is what they stand for. This is the minimum amount in North Carolina to file for this and get a template for our bylaws. And I was like, okay, who do I find for this? And I looked around, looked at my closest friends and my buddies and I was like, hey, you guys want to be on my board? And they're like, sure. What does it entail? I was like, we'll figure it out as we go. And just started the entity, filed for the federal approval in 2021 and got it approved in September of 21.
And so with that, you just have to kind of outline like a mission, have the structure and
have an idea. Yeah. Have your mission and have what your charitable purpose is. So the IRS wants to know if you're going to receive tax exempt funding, what are you going to do with it? And make sure it aligns with a charitable purpose. It could be really anything. You could have a charitable purpose that's immoral. But it's a tax code. It's what, when Uncle Sam's like, hey, where's my money? Okay, you better be doing what you said you're going to do with your money. Otherwise, we're going to take it from you.
Right.
So that's really what it came down to. And so ultimately, we treat veterans and first responders with PTSD and physical injuries, and keep it pretty vague.
And so, did you outline? Because I've checked out your website. Did you kind of build your program around the recovery that helped you?
Yeah. So exactly, it wasn't an idea that I came up with. And it wasn't conceptualized by me, and same with Jen, Dr. Jennifer Byrne, who's co-founder in this, that's a good story as well I can get into. But
how'd you get in with her?
So early on when I was conceptualizing, what does this all do? How does this work? I wanted to make sure, is anybody already doing this before I invent this wheel that's already there? And as I did some research and I looked up Googled some different things just to put in some keywords, and nothing was quite exactly what I was imagining or what I was used to. Nothing spoke to me or said the right verbiage or it was the right program that said this is the same as what you experienced. And except for pretty close to Jen's, her personal business is called 5x5 Performance Therapy. And I looked it up and I was like, man, those are all the things that she says all those things in her website, and I just need to know more about it. So reached out to her on LinkedIn, or actually I didn't even reach out to her. I just connected with her on LinkedIn, and just so happened I was her 500th connection because at that time I didn't want to talk to anybody and didn't know how to approach people with this, and I was like, I'll just wait it out. And so she messaged me. She's like, oh, thanks. She watches this. She'll be getting a kick out of this. She's like, congratulations on being the 500th friend. And I was like, cool. Well, I wasn't gonna approach you with this, but since you messaged me, I want to talk to you about 5x5 and what you do and my idea. And so it was important for me to have a conversation with her. So I was actually down in Disney World with my family, and she's like, "Oh, can you talk?" I was like, "Yeah, for sure." And as I talked to her and told her the story, it actually turned out her husband is a combat rescue officer. Her husband was a new combat rescue officer at the unit, the Vegas unit that I was at in Vegas for some of the deployments. And I was like, oh man. I was like, hey, tell him I'm sorry if I was a dick back then.
So he knew Vegas.
Yeah. I was like, sorry if I was a dick back then. That was a different person and very angry time period. I had a lot of things going on in my life. And she's like, no, it's fine. And so I told her what I wanted to do, and so she had her business, and it was very focused on very similar things. It was all telehealth. And it was really kind of just her like putting it together.
And is she a therapist?
Yeah, she's an occupational therapist. Yeah. So they do it all. They're like the jack of all trades in therapy. And so as I started like talking about the program and what I wanted to do, she was giving me a lot of advice. Oh, you should do this, you should do that, and think about these things and guide this direction. I was like, hey Jen, like appreciate those words of advice, but like what I really need right now is somebody to like be in the trenches with me, like in the ocean, swimming with me to build this thing. Will you jump in with me? Will you be a co-founder with me to do this? She's like, are you sure? I was like, yeah, I need somebody who has the credentials, who understands the doctors, the medical side of the house, that has the same vision as me. And you have that. Will you join me? And she's like, yes, for sure. And so that's that was early of 2021. We filed the paperwork in April, got it approved in September, did our first fundraiser in like June of 21 for a pilot program that was taking place in August of 21. And so we were able to raise enough money for that program and put on kind of a 1 week like snapshot of what we want, just to see, like, iron out some kinks. What does this look like when we fly people to the location? Where do they stay? Are the modalities of treatment good enough? Like, how does this all work? And do it at a small scale. And then we did that, and it was a success in the form of logistics and whatnot. When it comes to like treatment, I think we actually probably did more harm than good on the for those folks, because I think we opened up some wounds that were not ready to be opened up,
and then kind of sent them on their way.
Yeah, we didn't give them the amount of time that was needed to close them and address them. And so like we started the debridement process, and then like, hey, good luck with your infection. And so that like it's not a comfortable feeling for me. And so then we did another pilot program the following year, a few months later. And this was 2 weeks in person and 6 weeks of telehealth. And so it was like, okay, that's good. Like, it was another good rep. Still, I don't think we really affected the full amount of change that we could in that. Like, we need one more week out of that in-person time. So then the next one, we did 3 weeks in person and then 9 weeks of telehealth. And in the in-person portion, we put them in a resort hotel. They show up to Exos, which Exos is a professional sports facility that typically works with professional athletes doing physical rehab and prep for their sport, camps for their sport. So NFL Combine usually has a lot of folks go through Exos to prep for the combine, the scouting combine. And then you have physical, like veterans in the NFL that are injured. They'll go back through Exos, get rehab. And so you have really high class, high caliber coaches and physiotherapists. So they focus on all that physical, the dietitian, the massage, the strength conditioning, the physical therapy. It's all very physically oriented. And then I wanted to bring in mental health professionals to add in that mental portion of it, the therapy portion.
Did you find any resistance so far with like guys to the mental health portion, or like talking and opening up? Or?
I think you got to appeal to what some of these like what looks cool, like what does not look cool is going into essentially like a
white room,
a white walled room, and like a building that's got like, it's more of like a recreational setting. Like if you go into like a hotel gym, a typical hotel gym, not appealing. So that doesn't scream elite. That doesn't scream like healing. So yeah, like if it looks like a hospital gym in a hospital, it's not appealing. And so what a lot of people, they see the turf and they see the exciting stuff, like the working out and the fitness and physical therapy. And that's like as a market, it's hard to market like somebody is sitting in front of you and talking and doing like EMDR. You can't like market that really.
Yeah.
So when we take pictures and we show them, it's a lot of physical stuff that's taking place. It's exciting. It looks exciting. And part of the design is they show up and they work out together in the morning. It's kind of like a group workout. It's run by the strength conditioning coach, and each individual has their own like pathway of of reps, sets, and exercises, but they're all in the same area. And it's bonding, it's building this bond. But it's also very calculated. Individuals who are told that they can't walk or shouldn't pick stuff up, they'll start out saying, "Hey, my doctor said I can't do this," and then the coach that we typically use is like, "Okay, so
you're gonna do this.
You're gonna pick this up, but instead like focus on activating this part of your body." And then they're like,
just a higher caliber of like coaching through it.
Right. And like very focusing on very small movements, and specifically core oriented turning, like very, very much like a turning movement, torquing movement, which will highlight that core area, which is something that, a majority of the population is lacking. And so once they start realizing it's not that they can't do it, it's that they were told they shouldn't do it. And
probably by an overweight fat doctor.
Yeah, and then it's a limiting belief, and then now you get an expert in the field going, you can do it, and here's how to properly do it. And in fact, the pain meds that you were on are now no longer required because you have the strength and the stability in your core to now hold your body upright, and now your back pain is minimized.
Well, and that's a huge thing is like these pain meds or a lot of these prescriptions, it's not fixing what's causing it.
Right. It's
like you're having this
masking
pain
an injury. Yeah.
Because you have a weak core, like your posture's terrible, or like your lifestyle is causing these pains, and you being inactive is just accelerating that.
Right. Exactly. And a lot of the inactivity is caused because of the PTSD experience, traumatic experiences they have. So when they push themselves out in the field in the strength conditioning world, that's their first win. They're like, man, that felt good. They got to sweat in. They got to do exercises they don't usually do, and it's challenging to them. And then they hit the physical therapy, tables, and then they go sit on this like shift wave chair, and they use some of the tools that we give them with like our partnership with Therabody and Aura Ring, and so like they're feeling like high level athletes in these areas, and so they're walking out of that eating a good lunch, and then going into the afternoon into their mental health therapy. And so a lot of their walls and their barriers are like already down because they got those wins out of the way, and they're exhausted from the day, and they're like, man, that felt good. They could hit the cold plunge and then the hot tub, and then they enter into their space, and they're a little bit more vulnerable, and they're a little bit more willing to open up. And we had reversed it once. We did the therapy in the morning and then the fitness in the afternoon, and it was a disaster because you had the people like they had closed up, and then they like now you open up some emotions, and they're thinking about that, and then they enter into the fitness world, and they can't really focus on the fitness because of what they just went through in therapy, and so it was like a recipe for disaster. So fitness first, break down those walls, get them their successes, their early wins, go into the therapy, and then come out and they're going, wow, I want to do more of that. And so we do that for 3 weeks.
That's awesome. Do you feel like a lot of the people who go through this are sticking with that after they leave?
Yeah, I would say so. I think, I think it's the nice thing. So the way our program's built is it's very difficult for a program or an individual to succeed when they're still at home and they still have like stressors at home that they'd have to deal with. So part of our success formula is to be able to remove them from some of those stressors.
And that environment, that habit system.
Yeah, and to like rebuild, like, okay, this is what a new foundation looks like, and to build these habits over that 3-week period. And they don't have to worry about anything but just show up.
Yeah.
And then when they leave, we still have a telehealth model, so it's hybrid. And so they have 3 weeks in person and 9 weeks of telehealth. They still have a strength coach and a physical therapist and a psychologist and a dietitian. And now we can really peer into the home life and go, hey, like, are you eating? What's in your pantry? And like, here's what you can do with what you have in your pantry, and here's what you should change. We incorporate the family. So now the family is like, or who's this new person? And like, what are the things that they learn so they can recover together? And then physical therapy. If they don't have a gym that they typically go to, we send them home with bands, sliders, lacrosse balls. The Therabody used to give us some Theraguns. So really great kits to be able to say like, okay, you can still maintain your physical therapy, the things that were ailing you at home with these bands, and you can do a lot with a little. And so they maintain that for that 9 weeks. And I think overall that 3-month period gives them a good foundation to go, okay, this is what healthy and right looks like. And like, we're not the end all be all. And I'll never say that this is it. This is like, once you're done with the 3 months, you no longer need anything else. Like, that's not true. It'll never be true. And I don't think it's true for any therapy organization out there. I think we're a good foundation, a good place to start somewhere.
Yeah. Especially if people are like in those patterns, whether they're freshly out of the military or police or whatever their field are, just getting out, or it's been years and they're like in these habit systems to like kind of break them back out of it.
Right.
Because I remember whenever I had gotten out, some of my lowest points, I was like, wait a minute, I haven't been to the gym in like 2 weeks.
Right.
Like if I miss like a day or two of working out, like, and then I think back, oh, for so long, my entire life was like every day, like running in the morning, hitting the gym. And it's like, we need that mental or that physical push, that struggle to like just get to a baseline.
Right. And you look at every single individual when they come in, they had to pass a fitness test. They had to maintain a certain level of fitness standards. And then they get out and there's nobody holding them accountable. And you know, they have these traumas and they self-prescribe with either their own drugs or their own alcohol or own substances. And then they get stuck in this habit of terrible eating, not feeling good in their body. And then they just get lazy, don't want to work out. They get inundated with their job and daily tasks. And it just kind of just falls apart and they wear it on their body. And then once we start to address like some of the body problems and the mental problems all at the same time, you start to see some really big changes in some of them. And I think like some of what I really enjoy about those Exos coaches is they see it too. And we've had several of them pull us aside and the staff members aside and go like, man, in 1 week, like when they showed up here, they had like nothing in their eyes. And then like when they showed up on Friday, it was like a light bulb had gone off. And so seeing that and seeing the emotions and especially at the end, you know, the end of the 3 weeks in person, seeing their emotions and their gratitude is something I'll always cherish. We even have a counter going on. We've put on 10 programs so far.
Nice.
And we've had, of those 10 programs, we've had 11 people put a tattoo of this logo on their body somewhere, which is pretty wild to think because, you know, this is a logo that essentially like me and my wife kind of pseudo created. Driving, like part of establishing an organization is like, what's the name of it? Yeah. What's the logo? And so like going through all these different names and acronyms and things like that in my head as I'm driving, it took me like 3 months to really figure something out.
And a logo. You're like, dude, what the fuck should the logo be?
Yeah. So like we drove several out and Jen actually sent that to me like sometime earlier this year of like what the original logo that we drew out looked like. And I was like, yeah, that's crazy. Cause then we put it into like this, you know, we hired this company that would generate these logos and do this graphic design and chose like the top 5. And then of those top 5, we did a voting process. And this is what we landed on and the name as well. So there's meaning behind the name.
Nice. So I wanted to ask you, because you're in this world with this nonprofit and with your medical experience and background, I know a lot of guys and girls, first responders, paramedic, firefighters, who are on the back end of their career, maybe they're about to retire, and they don't really know that they have these PTSD symptoms or walled up symptoms or things that they're putting themselves in a box. And so they might not even know that they need to reach out and ask for help.
Sure.
What do you, or maybe they're expressing anger or isolation or whatever their choice is. How would you kind of open their eyes or like talk to them or like let them know like, hey man, like maybe like you're really angry a lot all the time.
Yeah. I would say step 1, listen. You know, for me, this was a time period where I felt exactly the same way. And you watch TV shows and you see like these movies of that, you know, this is what PTSD looks like. And like you see the sound of combat and like they're waking up sweating and choking like a pillow or something like that. And you're like, no, that's not really it. Maybe that is for some. But I would say a majority of them were like me, where you start seeing, or you start distancing yourself from everybody. because you had lost friends. I lost so many friends that I started refusing to make friends because at some point they were just going to go away anyway. So I just never it just became awkward for me to try to make a friend because at some point I was expecting them to die or, no, it just it was difficult for me to make friends. So I started disconnecting. I started to not think about anything. There was nothing going on in the brain. It was just staring into space and like brain shut off, and I should be watching my kids, but I'm just like kind of zoned and not really paying attention. Like I'd be pushing the kids on the swing and then like I'd still be pushing an empty swing and the kid my son or daughter would be off of that thing and I'd be like, man, something's going wrong here. And then it came to a point where I'd seen people that I'd known for 10 years and then they come over and say, hey, talk to me and whatnot. And I'd be like, God, I don't remember this dude's name. I know who he is. So I just don't remember this guy's name at all. Or like I would avoid people at the store. Like I saw a guy at a Walmart and I was like, oh, I know the guy. I mean, he was my athletic trainer.
Yeah.
And spent a lot of time with him. And she's like, oh, well, my wife was like, why don't you go say hi? And I was like, I don't remember his name. And I don't want to be embarrassed by like I was going and saying, hey, dude. So I just avoid it. And so like once those things start, I was like, man, I got some TBIs and maybe got some brain issues from these TBIs and whatnot. And then really like, as I started doing a little bit more research, I was very, I guess the best way to describe it, I would rather be in combat dealing with a firefight and solving problems than hearing my kids fight and scream at each other. I could handle myself in this instant with more, and more deliberately, and I have a solution to the problem. I can go, I know what to do. When I'm at home with my kids by myself, and at that era, at that time period, and my kids are fighting with each other, like one of them accidentally gets hurt because they're wrestling, and then like I hear like a loud crash, and you hear like a scream and a cry, and my older son's accidentally hurt my younger son. For me, like it always feels like death is lurking over my shoulder. And so I would immediately like fly through the roof of like, you could have killed him and just like yelling and screaming and getting very aggressive with him, which is something I just like, a regret I'll always have and a shame that I'll always have. And after one particular instance and sitting back down with, we had a 2-story house at the time, and I came back downstairs and sat down on the couch, and my wife came and sat next to me and was like, I don't want to make you upset, but I want you to know, like, I love you, but your boys are scared of you. And so that was a really difficult thing for me to hear. And it was something I was sitting there and, ashamed of myself already. And to hear her say that at that right time was like, yeah, there's something that needs to be addressed here. And I need to go figure this out. And, I could have very easily been like this, I'm just being a dad. And this is what being a dad is like. And there's nothing wrong with me. But I took that and I was like, hey, this is not what I want to be. And that's when I went to our psychologist and said, hey, I don't feel like I would have those symptoms of PTSD, but like, what even is, like, when people come to talk to you, what do they come talk to you about? Like, what do they say to you? Like, how do you start that conversation? And she's like, okay, well, what are you experiencing? And she asked me some questions. She's like, do you have any nightmares? I was like, I don't have nightmares, but I got that same like dream over and over. She's like, well, what's the dream? I was like, well, somebody's coming at me, and I draw my gun and I'm pulling the trigger and it's just not going and it's not going. And then like, it's moving back real slow, and then it gets to the end and there's no click. And then whoever's coming after me is now here. And I wake up. And she goes, how often does that happen? I'm like, 5 to 6 nights a week. Okay, that's a nightmare. I was like, it's not scary to me. It just sucks. Like, and so like lists out several other things. Like, well, let's give you some cognitive testing. Let's do an MRI on your brain. See what that is. And so your MRI came out fine. Your cognitive testing actually scored really well, except for like one area, which is attentiveness. You can't pay attention to things very well at all. You have a problem, like at least not as good as what you used to be or where you should be. And I was like, okay, well, what does that mean? They're like, well, it's indicative of like pretty significant PTSD. Mm-hmm. I was like, I don't feel like I have that. And so I was like, all right, whatever. I'll go to this therapy and just like talk about what I've experienced. And I was very closed up in the beginning, and then I started talking about some of these other things that I experienced. And the psychologist like, well, yeah, you got some pretty significant issues that need to be addressed. And once I started doing that and I started focusing on myself, I think one of the big symptoms the several symptoms was, like I said, the forgetting people, the memory loss, lack of communication, the irritability, I didn't enjoy my job. I was getting paid to jump out of a plane, not even with equipment or in the military shoot. I was in a civilian shoot, in a civilian like jumpsuit with a helmet, like one of the high speed helmets, and a GoPro. So it was canopy control, but it's civilian jumping, right? So it's a small canopy and it's fun. It's, you're doing 5, 6, 7 jumps a day, and I didn't want to do it. I was just like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do JM work. I don't want to have to like spot and then like go pack. Like I wasn't even packing my chute. It was like somebody else was packing it. And so I didn't want to do it. And that became a problem. And then, that's when I started getting treatment. And this was, really actually before Peter's accident. And after like going through 6 months or so of treatment, seeing the psychologist, once or twice a week, started to enjoy my job again and have purpose, feel like this is what I want to do.
Do you feel like now where Steve's at, that anger, that irritability, like that's still there? Or do you think that was just a major symptom of pushing all that stuff down?
Yeah, it's still there.
Yeah.
I mean, you still feel, it doesn't go away. It doesn't like, like the boiled, like when you feel yourself feel like boiling up and like, I'm going to snap, is there. But now I have tools to address it. That stuff will never not be there. But now when I feel it boiling up, I think about the tools that I have to either ground myself, like feeling things or taking a deep breath, thinking about what I say before I say it. I can't take back the things that I say once it's out, just like shooting, you can't take it once you fire a round, you can't take that bullet back. So same with what I say. I can't just fire off at the mouth and then like, I didn't mean that. And like,
it's like, all right, well, you've been doing that for 4 years now. It's like,
yeah. So slowing down and then like analyzing what am I actually upset about? And then, I think I'm a lot more patient than I was back then, a lot more patient.
So if you could go back, you're 30, 39?
39 years young.
So if you could go back to 25-year-old Steve and give him some advice, what would you tell him?
I would say this is all going to go away one day. Your job is not you. I invested so much time and effort in being a good PJ and a good team leader, and opportunities where I could have been home, spending time and building a stronger relationship with my family. I chose instead to hang out with my team, even though like my team was my family and they were my brothers and whatnot. And we deployed together and did some wild things together. But at the end of the day, when I got out, the only people that were left standing and having to pick up all the pieces was my family. And had I ruined it, like I tried to back then, had I ruined it, I would have not had that. And that probably would have been the end of me of like getting out. And now I have nothing. And like, the life in the military is very fun. And there's some very exciting things that you can do as a PJ, especially at the tier community. But once you are out, it is a bullet train and it is going. And once you said, all right, I think I'm going to step off here, they ain't getting off to like send you off and make sure you're well taken care of. It's like, okay, see you later. It's on to the next one. You're off the signal chatting. And then like, oh, shoot, I guess it's just me and my family. Like, and I do still keep up with some of my closest pals from there, but you realize, man, that I spent so much time investing in building my career and not enough time in my family. In fact, like I was always deployed in the summer. My son was born in the summer. So I missed, up until he was 13 years old, 14 years old, well, maybe like 12 and 13 years old. I had missed a majority of his birthdays.
Man.
And so like I had to relearn who he was, relearn how to communicate with him. And so now we have a great relationship now, but
Back then, did you feel like a distance?
yeah, because he was afraid of me and he didn't want to, he wanted to be tough and he didn't want to cry in front of me. And so that's, you know, I tell both my boys that like, that was my fault. I made you do that. I made you have to hide your emotions because of who I was. And I apologize for that. And I regret it. And yeah, so I think
That's awesome, man, that you were able to have that conversation with him.
yeah. So now I make it a point to try to make all of their sporting events or anything that's going on at home and prioritize that because, you know, my oldest is 16 now and he's driving. And so like there's some different responsibilities there and you know, if in 2 years, 3 years, he could be in a college, you know, out of the state or, you know, not living with us anymore. And so that's another bridge to cross. And it's like, man, like, okay, like our best years of being close are now behind us. And so, yeah.
Well, as we're wrapping up, you're full steam ahead with your nonprofit now, but did you struggle with finding like Steve's purpose when you got out? And do you still struggle with that, or do you feel like you're on your path now?
I'm on my path. I know, like, I'll never be like this multimillionaire, you know, business owner that's, you know, financially free and you just like have no debt and whatnot. But that's not like what I'm chasing. I would love to be obviously financially free, but, or debt free. But my purpose is again to help others, and if I can facilitate that in any way, and I know that, you know, I trust in the good Lord that He's going to continue to guide me in the right direction, and you know, we might come across challenges, whether it's fundraising challenges or whatever else the organization presents itself. I can always rely back and say this, like there's a purpose behind this, this adversity that we're going through, and we'll learn from it, but we'll get out of it. But yeah, I've got my purpose, and I still stay plugged into the community.
Yeah.
I still teach through a contractual gig that I do. You know, I still go to teach the young guys about the experiences that I had, the lessons that I learned. A lot of missions that I give them, or training missions I give them, are real missions that I've done. And I like to see what their mindset is,
Yeah, and that's good too. It keeps you not totally detached from that portion of your life. You're
Right.
still kind of tapped in.
Right, exactly. And I can instill some, you know, one thing that out of Peter's accident, the one thing that I was asked, like, hey, what do you hope comes from this? Like after the investigation, this accident investigation, what do you want to come from this? What would you like to see come from this? And this is not the punitive one. This is like the factual one. And I was like, well, I know what I want, and I know what you guys are going to do. I'm like, well, what's that? It's like, you guys can create more paperwork. You can create more paperwork that's going to be useless. There's going to be another certification that they're going to have to chase when that's not what happened here. It was like Peter was well qualified. We had just done several courses and trained on the tower. We were fresh in ropes. This was an accident. I was like, what I would like you to do is put out an update or a guide or a message to the entire career field saying, if you are building an anchor and you're using that as your hull system or your rappel, do not tie yourself into that anchor unless you absolutely have to. And 90%, 99% of the time, you don't have to unless you're big wall climbing. You can always clip into something else. You can always build yourself your own anchor, your own self-arresting type of anchor that will keep you safe. And that way, if this thing that you are using as your main hull system or your main rappel or your main belay, if that thing fails, only one person's falling, and we minimize casualties, and we can have a lot of control there. But if you have a bunch of guys clipped into this and it fails, then you increase the amount of casualties, and that's what would have kept Peter alive if he didn't. If we had a message like that going across, and of course that's not what happened. They made a certification and pushed it out, and now they have to do a senior mountaineering qualification, and it's no different than what we were already doing. Now you just have to log it. And so now every course that I do, I tell the story of Peter's accident, number one, so people don't get rumor. They hear it straight from the horse's mouth, and they understand, or at least can affect the change. They can understand what I would have done different, and hopefully they listen to that and do different.
Yeah, and that's really smart insight from your perspective, and you were there.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of different stories, and I think as people are going to say different things, and that's their business.
Yeah. Well, how can people find your foundation if they want to get plugged in, if they're seeking help? Like, how do they reach out? How do they find you?
Yeah. So we have our typical social media pages in our website. So if you even just Google Shields and Stripes or go to www.shieldsandstripes.org, you can find us there. And a couple different pathways. If you're looking to get help, there's an apply button. What you would do is hit that apply button and you fill out an application. And really that's our first screening tool to see if we are the right fit for you. And, there might be organizations out there, great organizations that do things that we don't do, whether it's TBI focused or maybe it's a detox clinic because we don't do detox. Maybe you need another great organization like Warrior's Heart or something like that would do great things. And then that application goes to our therapists. I don't see it. It's HIPAA protected. The therapist kind of analyze it and, I guess triage it and decide, hey, reach out and contact, hey, you're either a good fit or let's push you out to this other organization. Once they say, hey, yeah, you're a good fit, there'll be an interview process, which again will outline, hey, maybe they've got some acute suicidal ideation or some substance problems that maybe they didn't address on the sheet, the original application, and then we can start directing them in other directions again. And then finally, it will be a final interview, and this one's more so for timing because our program is a scheduled basis, and it's really based off of funds raised. I wish we had enough funds to be able to forecast out, hey, we're going to have a program at this time and this time and this time. That's not us right now. It's not reality for us right now. We don't have the funds to do that, but if we did, that would be great. But so it's based on how much money we can raise, and then we'll start, hey, this is when our program window is, and if that fits in their schedule, because they'll have to take time off of work if they're being employed. And
is it only for certain communities or?
All active duty, active military, veteran, first responder.
Nice.
So we don't, there's no barriers. I want to reduce as many barriers to care. So I'm not going to ask for the DD-214s and identification and this and that. Like, you just have to have served, and have to have, be experiencing something enough for you to want change. And then for our donors out there, same process. You go into the website, and hit the donate button. And then what we're really looking for right now is recurring donations to develop sustainability. Even just $10 a month is a big help for us. Just that stable support, that stable community is so important so that we can actually develop a predictability and eventually get to a point where we can say, yeah, we will have this program, this cycle. It costs about $20,000 to put one person through the whole 3 months, which comparably to other programs like detox centers and inpatient centers, it's actually less than what some of those are.
Yeah.
It's very high quality care. But again, $20,000 is not something that comes cheap. So, so it's all donation based, and grants.
Nice. Well, Steve, I want to thank you for coming on, man. I want to thank you for your service to your country. I mean, you have an amazing story, and you're still serving the community. You're serving the guys who have served, and I appreciate you coming on, man. God bless.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you for having me. Awesome. Happy to be here.
All right, thanks, man.
Yes, sir.
All right. Bye, everybody.